Okay, this is Techsoft Designer. I'm going to quickly explain what the main features are and how you use it. So at the top here you've got a bunch of menu items. Sometimes these change, so the ones that are greyed out at the moment, sometimes they're lit up. When they're lit up means you can use them. When they're greyed out means that you can't use them. You've got your main toolbar over here, and on this toolbar, any of the tools, if you hold down your left mouse button, you get a bunch of sub choices off them. So these are all different ways of drawing curves and things. If I go to my straight line one, I get a bunch of different ways of doing it and so on. So the one that you've picked is the one that shows in the picture, but there are more there that you need to be aware of. On the right hand side here, this toolbar is to do with how your screen looks. So you can zoom in and you can zoom out. You can use things called grid lock and step lock, and you can change grids. So the grid at the moment is what's called an orthogonal grid. That means it goes X and Y. Okay, and at the moment this one has got 10 millimeters in between each square. So if I zoom in a little bit, from that square there to that, from that point to that point is 10 mil. But you can see that my mouse pointer moves anywhere around the screen. If I switch on grid lock, it only locks to those points. It means I can only draw from those points. If I want to draw a line, I've got my line tool on, I click once, I move across, and I click again. Now what you may have noticed then is down the bottom here I've got a load of information coming around. So if I go back to this point here and click, you can see that the distance is set to 0, and as I drag down, this is called rubber banding, as I drag down you can see now it's gone to 60 mil. If I click again, it's drawn me a line that's 60 mil long. So I can use these tools here down the bottom. There we go, I've gone 50 across, click again, click and go up, finish my square off. So I can work out angles and distances by looking at the bottom to make my work more accurate. The next one across says step lock. Step lock means that if I click on step lock, I can go in little steps between each of these squares. If I zoom in again so you can see a bit more accurately. So for instance, that's point 1, point 2, point 3 and so on. So there's little increments that go across. I think there's 10 of them, and you can actually double click on any of these things to work them out. So if I double click on there, I can see that my spacing is every 1 millimeters. I can change those if I want to. The other thing I could change on here if I chose to, and you might want to do this in some projects, let's just zoom back out so you can see what I'm talking about. At the moment the grid that we're on is a simple XY grid. It's a two-dimensional grid. If I double click on my grid settings, I've got one here. At the moment that we're using an orthogonal one, and there's 10 millimeters between each dot, I could set this to isometric. So I click on isometric and say OK, it turns into a three-dimensional grid. What's the difference? Well, let me show you. On a three-dimensional grid, if I switch on my grid lock, I can draw things like, wanted to make a cube, I could draw my cube lines. Oops, went too far then. That's good. I can demonstrate something to you now with that mistake I've just made. And that's a three-dimensional view. So that mistake, that's a good example. Down here I've got something called delete any. If I click on delete any and I click on a line, watch what happens. Oh, it's no good, it's deleted the whole thing. I'm going to do Control Z to undo that. I could have come up here and clicked on, there's an undo up here somewhere as well. But if I hold down on my delete any, there's this second one here, you can say, it tells you what above what it's doing. That one says delete part of an object. So if I now click on my line, it just tidies it up and gets rid of the bit that's sticking out over the edge. So these features here, delete and delete any, are quite useful when you're trying to clean up any mistakes that you might have made. Okay, before we go much further, I just need to show you, let's zoom back out again, making sure that we've got the right page size set up. So I'm going to put my grid back to my orthogonal grid because that's pretty much what you're going to be using. And what I want to do is I want to make sure that my page size is correct. So I'm going to go to Setup and Drawing, and I'm going to go to my Layout, and here it tells me the size I'm working with. So at the moment I'm working with A3 and I'm working with landscape, and that's what I want to be doing. If yours doesn't say that, if yours says A4 or something else, you need to come to the drop down and you need to make sure you choose this one that says ISO A3, and it needs to be on landscape, and then you click OK. The other thing you need to know how to do is how to save your work. So before you go too far down the road, you need to go File, you choose Save As, and when you're screen opens, you need to obviously find a suitable location. So I'm going to actually put mine onto my SD card. I'm just going to give it a suitable name. I'm going to call this one demo, as in demonstration, and you'll see that this is a 2D design file, and hit save. So if I want to go back and load that in later on, I know where to get it, or I can come up here and I can open it. It'll be in my recent files list, which will be at the bottom there. Okay, just before I finish this video, the last couple of things just to show you. If I highlight all of these, they turn pink, and I hit my delete button, I can get rid of them in one go. Sometimes when you delete things, it might look like these dots have gone. Okay, if I want to put them back, all I do is click up on this redraw button here, and this refreshes my picture. In the same way, if I wanted to actually draw something, let's draw a shape maybe. Let's just draw a square. Okay, if I wanted to see this without the dots on, I can turn my grid off, and now you can see it's left the little white lines where the grid was. I hit redraw, and it puts them back again, so I can see what my picture looks like without the grid in the background.